Welcome to The Localist, a podcast where we talk about the highs and lows of building community through entrepreneurship. I'm your host, author of the Localist book, and small business consultant, Carrie Rollwagen. The Localist is sponsored by Infomedia, a Birmingham-based website and media company where I work as senior vice president. At Infomedia, we help small businesses get big results online. Our guest today is Caleb Chancey, who is creative director here at Infomedia. So occasionally I get questions from the audience, and a lot of times I know people from Infomedia or from our sister companies, Uptick and Tempo, who would be just fantastic at answering these questions. It's one of my favorite things about working here is that I have kind of a secret way to get answers to my own questions. And I wanted to bring that to you guys as the audience today too. So before we did this episode, I went on my social media and asked, do you have any questions about branding? Because that is what I wanted to talk about today. And you did. So we actually have several questions that I'm going to ask Caleb from you today. So if you ask one of those questions on social media, listen in and see if you hear your question. Welcome to the Localist podcast, Caleb.
Thank you, Carrie. I feel very welcome.
Yeah. Since we work together, I feel like that was a weird intro. So if anybody is listening, it's because we have actually talked plenty today already.
We just had many conversations before this one. So we're just breezing right into this
Right, exactly. We're actually going to do a little more of that. One thing that's exciting about this episode is that we asked for questions from the audience, and we got them. So I'm going to throw some of those questions at you.
Love it.
But, you know, weirdly, none of the questions was an intro to the episode. So today we actually are talking about branding, which is a lot of what you do as creative director, or at least work with every day. So before we actually ask the specific questions, I just wanted to say in general, what is branding? Other than, I think most people know fonts and colors, and that's part of it, but can you kind of talk about what is overall branding?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of the author. And so if you know it, please put it in the comments below. Can I say that?
Yeah, let's do it.
But the book is Zag, and it's a really great book on branding. And in that, I believe they talk about a quick definition of branding. A lot of people think it's visuals, and it definitely applies to visuals. But it's the gut reaction that you have when you see something that represents that company, whether that is talking to a person, like a salesperson, seeing a logo, that kind of like, oh, I feel this way about that company.
Yeah.
That's their brand.
Like, what do you see when you see?
Exactly. Yeah. And so, like, you
Coke,
could, exactly.
For people listening.
Yeah. And so you might go, favorite drink, or, oh my gosh, my grandma loved bottled Cokes. And that was like, so that's the brand.
Yeah.
So in certain ways, you can absolutely influence the brand, but the brand is who you are. And so, but it definitely applies to visuals. Most people, when they say branding, they mean logos. That's totally fine. Yeah. They can be synonymous with it, but it's a little bit bigger than that, and that's good.
Yeah. So I think that I really like how we went philosophical immediately, which is very Caleb, but that's how it goes. Great. So yes, it is like who you are as a company. So in some ways it applies to everything from the color of your text to a customer service. But even when we are working on something at Infomedia, or when somebody's working on something at another design house or whatever, like, we don't just mean colors and fonts either. So I know sometimes we mean even photography, even text. Yeah. Like, so even that brought, like, what you would hire someone to do when they're rebranding, what could that encompass, or what should it encompass?
You kind of hit it, is that there's, if the brand is kind of in general, philosophically, like who you are, you may have gotten involved with a company at some point, whether through a service or something, and you go, oh my gosh, like, y'all are so much friendlier than the blank that I first thought, or you weren't like this. That means that your brand might be a little bit misaligned. There's something out there that cued them that you were one way, and you're not that way, you're this other way. And so to bring that kind of into alignment, that can be the type of photography you use. So the idea, if you want to do something, if your brand is like, we want to be very personable with our customers, Well, maybe you don't use stock photography because stock photography is super general, and that would be kind of anti your brand. It would maybe it's not one for one. Like maybe you should use stock photography, but that could help.
Yeah.
And it's all those tiny little incremental changes that when people encounter your messaging, the words you use, things like that, when they meet you or encounter your service, it needs to all align. And so branding can be fonts, it can be colors, it can be your logo, it can be the illustration style that you use, the icons that you use, it can be an assortment of different things. Messaging is really huge. What are the words that you use? Are they so broad or general, or do you use specific words like to convey what you mean by things?
Yeah. Well, and all of that, like you were saying, connects back to the philosophy of the brand. So it is, again, like how can we, in all of these touch points, all the ones that we can control, how can we represent ourselves better? And sometimes that's who we are. Sometimes it's a little bit aspirational.
Absolutely. And we say that a lot of times with websites is like, this should give an accurate portrait of who you are today and not confine you to who you want to become.
Yeah.
And so when we, something that's like a brand guide, which is basically laid out and things of what your brand is, it should give you freedom. Like there's a lot of freedom within those type of what would be seen as kind of constraints of like, well, we don't use any color, we use these colors. Well, that gives you freedom because then you're like, man, what do those colors go with? What does those make me think of? And you can actually start following that instead of being kind of lost and going like, I don't know. Yeah. And a lot of this can feel like, well, why is that important or things like that? And it's like, honestly, if it's not important to you, it's not important to you. But everybody is always kind of presenting who they kind of hopefully want to be perceived as and things. And it's more just, it's not that it is important in general. And we're just kind of giving it kind of its due attention in a lot of ways. So
yeah, I mean, this came up a lot. We did a presentation last season on personal branding, and one of the things I was talking about is like you have a personal brand whether or not you want to.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you're on social media, especially like your to some extent, if you interact with people, you have one. But especially if you're like putting out Instagrams, you're putting stuff on LinkedIn, you're dressing a certain way at work. You have a personal brand. It's more like, what are some ways, some tweaks that I have control over so that I'm helping to create the narrative that I want?
And I think anytime there's a phrase like personal brand makes me like, talk about the brand of personal brand. The gut reaction I get is like, oh.
I know.
Because you think of like a highly curated facade. That's like, I want to be perceived this way.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm presenting myself this way. It's like, technically you're doing that. However, really what a brand is supposed to do, and if you have a personal brand, is, are you accurately presenting who you really are? And are you doing it in a way that's consistent? Are you putting thought into it? And examining your business or your life or how you want to present it, that's a really good exercise regardless. And then there are practical steps you can take to encourage yourself, encourage others to know that you do that or are available that way. There's a whole, the standard thing is like, anytime you see somebody with a blazer on and elbow pad things, oh, you're a professor?
Yeah.
That's one of those things that you think of. It's like, because that's like the personal brand of the professor.
Right,
it's like that kind of feel of it. And so it's like, do you want to be perceived as a professor really quickly? Are you a professor? You should get one of those jackets.
Exactly.
Like, that's a shorthand visually.
Do you have a pipe?
That's exactly right.
Then you're a classics professor.
So many pipes.
Yeah. Well, I think this was a good kind of intro. I want to jump into questions.
Love it.
So we got several questions from our audience.
Yes.
That I have on our
beautiful branded cards. Details.
Yeah.
Details. There it is.
So some of these came in through social media, and then some of them came through our clients. So the first one is, and this is anonymous, and you'll probably know why when I ask it.
Okay.
I'm starting a new business, and I don't have much of a budget, so I used AI to make a logo. Is that really so bad?
No.
Next question. All right, let's talk about that, because we're seeing that a lot.
Yeah, it's so again, logo
Mm-hmm.
can be a part of a brand.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a brand. And so the first step would be like, I mean, yes, you can associate it with brand. So if that is accurately representing who you are at that moment and letting you move on from that, that's fine. The whole point, though, is there is a lot of feedback and a lot of value in having someone other than yourself examine who you are with you.
Mm-hmm.
We're too close to ourselves. We're
Yeah.
too close. We need help. Other people to say, like, do you know that you're this way, which is good. Like you should emphasize that more. That's why you would hire a designer or someone who's a brand strategist or someone like that to really help with that. If you're trying to churn out a logo and move on, I totally get that. I did that. I helped my sister-in-law with one of her startup businesses. Same thing.
Yeah.
Where I was like, it wasn't AI, it was another thing, but it was very, very simple. And yeah, it worked. But I also gave her all these tools and things like that to kind of walk through, and it's a good exercise. So
Yeah.
absolutely, like, you're going to have a lot of people strong opinions on AI. That's then in many ways right now is seen as a moral question. Taking it out of that, of like the simplicity of, is it so bad? It's like, it's not bad to go with a simple option. Before AI, there were icon libraries. You just go and find an icon and just call it your logo. Like, those are free range. Like, go for that if that works. But at a certain point, I would encourage that if you're going to do that, don't ever see that as a final end point. If it helps you get started, great. But that is something that you need to kind of really kind of examine potentially later down the road.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. And I've done, like you and I both, I think we do a lot of side hustles that may or may not be monetarily rewarding.
Yeah, mostly not for me.
Yeah, I think both of ours are just like, I think this would be really cool.
Let's do that.
Yeah. So we've both done a lot of that. So I do think, again, I think so much of this was before AI with us, or we also have access to at least people who may know some about this, so we can kind of take a step forward. But like the first Localist color palette that I did, like I did hire somebody to do the logo, to do the book cover at that point. So I had a color, because it was the color he used on the book cover. I had a font. Well, not really, because he used the font. The font he used was not a web font, so I had a print font, which there was nothing wrong with that. He did a perfect job. Andrew Thompson.
Yeah.
Good job.
He's great.
Yes. He did a great job, and the assignment was a book cover, but I couldn't use that font on the web, so I just Googled font similar to this font.
Yep. Good Google.
Not the perfect way to do it,
Yeah.
but it worked out.
Yeah.
And then I took that color, put it in a color picker website, and found similar colors.
Yeah.
And it was okay, because that's where I was at that point.
Yeah.
At that point, it was just a side project. It was a free thing. We'll talk some more later about how Kana, who's a designer who works with us, expanded that color palette and brought so much more creativity, freedom, like you said, so much more in. But I couldn't have hired Kana at that time when I was just doing a podcast on the side for fun.
Yeah.
And so those were the tools then. I think AI might be there now. So it's not necessarily wrong, but it's maybe not. It's maybe incomplete, and it's maybe not going to grow with you.
Yeah, and we may get into this later, but there's very few brands that haven't developed because their people have developed, their company has developed, they've brought more on services, therefore their visual changes to kind of reflect that. And so their language might change to reflect that. At the very beginning, what you value is probably getting it done and like trying to do that.
Yeah.
However, if you're starting off with something that is like, no, the honestly, everything about this needs to be dialed in.
Yeah.
It's like, don't try to do that yourself because, again, you're too close to it.
Yeah.
That's the other thing of there's companies that come to us to help either with a rebrand or to help expand their brand guide, and they're very precious about their logo.
Yeah.
And that's great. That's totally fine. But do understand that so many times that was then and this is now. and you shouldn't dismiss what was there, but there's a natural growth. Even you mentioned Coca-Cola. These major brands, they're not the same as what they were. You might think they were, but if you look at their whole brand guide, social media didn't exist when Coca-Cola was around.
Yeah.
So how are they going to fit that script logo in a tiny circle?
Yeah.
And so they have to say like, oh, what if we just did the bottle? Like, what if the outline of it, and like that whole design philosophy. So it's every like 3 to 5 years, there's this like industry takes stock of where you are, and do we need to add or subtract from our current brand principles and guides, whether that's additional vocabulary, additional visual language, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the very, like, the what got us here won't get us there necessarily.
Yeah.
And that applies to so much about business. I do totally agree. The other thing about your logo is, like, when you look at it every day and you develop a positive association, to me, the Infomedia logo might mean history. It might mean all the good experiences I've had with Infomedia, but that's not how a stranger is reading it.
Yeah. And it's hard to imagine what you can't imagine.
Yeah.
So that's why you bring another person in.
Yeah.
And so we will tell a client every now and then, if we do exactly what you want us to do, we're only doing what you can imagine. But if you allow us to potentially have the freedom to go beyond it, we can go beyond what you imagined for it. And that could be negative, or that could be like overwhelmingly positive. People hire interior designers all the time for that. I don't know what to do in this space. And all of a sudden somebody comes in who hasn't been in that room for so long, and then goes, oh, we should do this. Like, I would have never seen that. So
I love you can't imagine what you can't imagine, because I do think it connects directly to AI, because AI is like expounding on what you can imagine. We talked about this actually on multiple of Localist episodes. Like, AI is typically telling you you're right about what you want, or giving you what you wanted, telling you you're right about everything that you think. So, like, I think when it comes to everything from logo to relationship, it's like, is that what you're looking for? Or are you looking for someone to challenge you, to show you where the gaps are, and to take what you imagine further or in a different direction? Or are you just looking for more of what you already thought about?
Yeah, it is do you want to stay within your circle? Or do you want a little bit of that tension, or that positive conflict, or that question of what you said, of like saying like, but what about this? And that takes you out of that constant circle of affirmation to like, oh, I don't know, maybe this. And so I think it is potentially a good starting spot for an AI logo, if that's what you value. It's all value again, of like, what do you value at that point?
And what's your business? Because if your business, if you're wanting to go international, then you need to invest in my opinion, you should invest in a logo.
Yes. It's where you are at that time. I totally get that. Know that that's a beginning point. And I would say that even if you go full on into like a full brand kit, everything, that's amazing. 3 to 5 years later, deep breath, bring trusted people in from the outside. Hey, is there anything I'm missing? Is there anything? Expand. And then it's great. Or we don't need to use that anymore. Subtract. And it just becomes way more accurate, instead of this like set it and forget it mindset. We made that decision 30 years ago. We don't have to make it now. It's like, you're very different than who you were 30 years ago, hopefully.
That's the idea.
Hopefully.
All right. Next question. Good answer.
Thanks.
You're on a roll.
Good night, everybody.
All right. I got a quote from a designer, and it was crazy expensive. Do I really need all of this? Can't it just be simple?
I have a quick answer. That is.
Well, like the last one.
Unlike the last one.
Is it so bad to use AI? No. All right. Moving on.
The person might be making cheap and simple synonyms. And they're not. Simple can be expensive. And just take a moment and think of the companies and brands and things that you interact with. And simplification is actually stripping something down to a core message or things, using less words. Poetry's really hard. Writing really lengthy sentences is hard, but poetry's like the idea of like settling down of like, what are your real brand colors? What is your real message? Working with a brand strategist right now, I mean, you interview somebody and they're going to say, oh, our company has integrity. Our company cares about the customer. And I was in the room with the brand strategist when they go, every single company says that.
Yeah.
What makes you different? And they're like, well, it's our integrity. It's like, what about it? And just driving that home, we're simplifying the message down. And so that simplification can be more of a process. Also, again, it's the value. The exercise would be the same question, but about timing, not price. Hey, why is it shouldn't like this should be simple. It shouldn't take so long. It's like, oh, so you value it being quick. So if I were to give you, I heard this example, I'm trying to remember who it is. Again, put it in the comments if you remember who this is. I was saying like, so you're saying that if I were to produce an incredible logo in 5 minutes, that I could charge the same thing? They're going to know you should charge cheaper if it only took you 5 minutes. It's like, so it should take me six months? Like, where's your value of it? And so what I hear when someone says that's too expensive is, oh, you don't value it.
Yeah.
Like to that extent monetarily, and that's fine.
So it's too expensive for you.
Yeah, maybe. It's too expensive for you right now.
Yeah.
Or you haven't seen the value. And so an incredible brand house in Atlanta is Matchstick. And Craig there said, either on a podcast or somewhere, like, whenever somebody comes with you at price, you talk about value. Because what they're saying is that from what I'm thinking and valuing, that doesn't match. And it's like, you're right. Let me show you what this really applies to, the value of it, that it adds. Oh, have you thought about how if you do this, every single one of your salespeople will never have to labor over slideshows ever again?
Yeah.
How many hours is that going to save?
Yeah.
How many is like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Where it's like, all of a sudden it's like, oh, that will solve marketing. So then all of a sudden their marketing budget is pulled into this, and that solves copywriting. So it says, oh, their copywriting budget is pulled into it, and all of a sudden it's like, this is going to be potentially saving us money. And it's like, there you go.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about money, and it's all value.
Yeah.
So it's that's kind of the simple answer is, it is simple is expensive, or can be expensive. It's at the end of the day not about necessarily money. It's value tied to it. And so, yeah.
Well, and I think I was interpreting the question a little bit differently, slightly, in that I thought, because they said, do I need all of this? So I'm thinking maybe it's more than fonts and colors. It's like a bunch of different, like, a lot of time when we do a brand kit, it's several pages. Yeah. Which you did touch on a little bit with what you're saying there. But let's say, like, if typically what is in a brand kit when we do it, and maybe why is that valuable? I mean, obviously you don't need it, but why do we include more than just, here's one color, here's your logo, there is one color, here's a font?
I had a conversation with somebody yesterday about it, because they said, our colors are black and white. And I was like, we can do that. Yeah. It's like, we can absolutely do that. The problem is going to be when you want to emphasize something. Like, it's just going to all involve look the same. That's why you have kind of these emphasis colors and things. Right. So standard brand guide for us is very simple. And if you ever do something like a freelance designer, or if you need to do AI or things these are things to kind of lock in is, what are your primary colors? What's your secondary colors? What's your primary font? What's your secondary font? The reason you need those is, again, this kind of a visual hierarchy. Again, you can just be black and white, but what if you want to draw attention? What if you want to have a subsect within it? Everybody goes italics with it. Yeah. Of like, so it's going to be bold, it's going to be regular, it's going to be italics. And it's like, okay, sure. It doesn't read well in certain ways. It looks a little busy when you do that. And so it almost feels too much. You need to simplify it down. And so there are primary fonts, there are secondary fonts, there are web fonts, there are that's the sizing of how the actual logo and logo mark should run, the different versions of it we include within that, are all incredibly practical real quick.
Yeah.
And what will happen is if you don't have those things and say, I don't need all that, is you'll eventually be making those choices arbitrarily,
Yeah.
arbitrary,
Yeah.
down the road,
Yeah.
and it's not going to be consistent. So
I agree. Like, so much of the reason you would do a brand guide is so your brand is showing up consistently. For example, at Infomedia, different people work on the website versus, say, the social media. But because we have a brand guide, we all have that guide for like, how do we do this? How can different people do this and be consistent?
Yeah.
But that's where you see a lot of businesses, their social media maybe looks different than when you go into their physical location or when you're looking at their website. Because even if you have the same logo, the more steps you get away from that if you don't have a guide, you're going to just go in different directions.
And when you say that, there might be someone listening go, why does that matter?
Yeah.
Why does it matter? And it's like, it might not matter to you at this point. But for every decision that's not made as a standard, that social media person had to make a decision. That other person had to make a separate decision. That other person has to make a separate decision. You could have set parameters that was a given. You could have a library of images and say, don't even question.
Yeah.
These are our approved brand images. This is what we use for everything. So now no one's searching around going, what should we use for it? And it doesn't matter until all of a sudden they post something or do something that is so just them, not the brand.
Right.
That it's so not the company or things like that. It's like, oh, that's the problem.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, the problem started a little while ago.
Yeah.
When there wasn't that alignment for it.
And you're right. This stuff, it goes everywhere from slide decks to ordering T-shirts for a company to even like in-store signage, it just all across the board. You can save so much time and really money if you're getting things printed or
absolutely. And putting that thought in a little bit before we're serving a client right now that they made a pretty quick decision on some things and very wisely knew that we were going to be coming in. They just needed something, so all their orders were very small for it. They knew they were like, yes, we're going to burn through these. We just needed something. And I was like, I respect that so much. Yeah. But a lot of the times you don't think ahead like that. Yeah. And you're like, oh, well, I can't change that. I just printed 50,000 of them. And so it's like, oh, man.
Like how many companies have we talked to who don't want to change their logo because of their trucks?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I get that. Yeah. I absolutely get that. And that's another topic of just like you can do a redesign or rebrand that plays well with the current version. So that it's not like a night and day difference. I mean, sometimes you need that, but sometimes it's like, we're going to be running the old logo probably in these locations for the next 10 years.
Right, yeah.
So like, let's make sure that it plays well. And it's like, oh, those are great parameters. Again, it kind of gives freedom. That's
another reason I love, like, I would see that as a reason to work with a professional team too. Yeah. Like, because our visual team, that's you and our other designers, know how to do that, where it's like these actually still work together, they're consistent. Whereas if I were just to plug that logo into AI or use AI to generate a new logo, they would just look like two totally different logos. Yeah. But a good designer can kind of tell that story, which is cool. So you don't have to get a new truck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you should, but I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, next question. This is from Courtney from Instagram. How is branding for consulting different than branding for selling a product?
Going to kind of what we established of that definition of the brand is kind of that gut feeling that people have. The applications might be different. So if you're a consultant, you're probably not doing like product box design, like things like that. So the application would be different. Also, companies that have products, sometimes a company is founded on a singular product, and the product is the company. But sometimes the product is kind of a sect or a sub-brand
Right.
of that. And so we'll keep using
Yeah,
Coca-Cola.
that's right.
You didn't realize that was going to be just a great
I
reference.
totally
the whole
did it
time.
on purpose.
But just so you have
and every
Coca-Cola,
time we talk about it, I'm like, time for more Coke.
I know, time for more.
Yeah.
Hey, sponsored by.
That's right.
Coca-Cola has kind of their major brand, but underneath it is Coke Zero, is Sprite, is all these sub-brands to it that have their own, that immediately have effect on that packaging. But as far as kind of the overall brand, they're just trying to tell their story accurately, which is what a consultant would do as well. But a consultant is going to have to be thinking of things that aren't necessarily visual, because they're probably going to be more service-based.
Right.
And so it's, how do you consistently tell the same story through different services so that the services don't look wildly different from each other and make sense. And it actually helps to know and define who you are as a brand, as a consultant, to know what you're really good at, and maybe something that you want to recommend somebody else might do. Instead of like, I'm a consultant for everything. It's like, no, I do this. Within that, I do these things. And here's how I speak about each one of those clearly so people understand what my differentiator is.
Yeah.
So product design probably leans a little bit, definitely messaging, but definitely visuals towards that. But since a brand is that gut reaction to it, it's going to be the way that you communicate your services uniquely.
Yeah, I think that's good, and it kind of goes into our next question a little bit, because I think the consultant touches a little bit on the personal brand.
Oh, yeah.
Not necessarily. I mean, you could have a group of consultants, but I think a lot of consultants are working individually. And the next question is from Rachel on Instagram.
Same last name.
I didn't use the hand. I was like, I'm not going to get into
Rachel
trying
on
to pronounce a handle.
Yep. This is
But that's how I'm approaching this. If your name is obvious on Instagram and not so unique that I would be calling you out, I'll use it.
This is from I Love Trucks on Instagram.
So Rachel's question is, how do I build a personal brand? So I know this is a little bit of a pivot, because we've been talking so much about again, fonts and colors, that kind of thing. And personal brand includes some other things. I think this meshes a little bit with that consultant question. But what does go into a personal brand? Does it have to be a logo? Should you have a logo? Should you have a color palette? What do you think?
You could have a logo if you wanted to. If you're kind of putting forward public-facing things, so like videos or talks or documents or like white pages that you download and things, it would probably be helpful to have that visual guide, as if you were in a company in a lot of ways. Practically, I would recommend buying a couple books on branding, just in general, not necessarily personal branding. Like there's going to be some out there for it, but even like that book Zag that I said, like just it's a good start spot. Brands That Are Radically Relevant by Blake Howard, like, is great. Like there's a few other ones, but to kind of get a sense of what kind of materials brands put out and things, I think that's really good. But for a personal brand, you can build it a few different ways. The major thing is deciding who you are. Through those books will have exercises in it and questions to ask. That's why I would say to get them. Go through those exercises, figure out who you are and what your messaging is, and then try to figure out ways to be consistent in delivering that message. And so there's a million different things that you can do. What do you feel like your outlets, social outlets and things? Maybe you're not for Instagram. Maybe you're more LinkedIn. Maybe that fits you better because you're not going to be trying to be trendy and doing the thing that is of the moment. No, you want to maybe give advice, or maybe you want to have these talks. Oh, well, what if I put together talking points for it? And what if I broke those up into little videos? Okay, great. Where would I host those? Oh, is that YouTube or Vimeo? It's probably YouTube. And like thinking through that and don't think you have to do everything. Like, again, use those exercises, find some brand exercises, decide who you are, and then see what platforms align with that and stick to only that. There's plenty of amazing brands that have happened through like Substack because they're just like, they build an audience.
Yeah.
They build an audience just through writing and being like, I know a guy who got a book deal because of that. And it's like he just built his audience up, and it was amazing. But he would not have been able to do that on Instagram. He actually gave up Instagram because it was kind of worthless to him, like into his audience. And that was a really good decision.
Yeah.
So figure out who you are and kind of what your voice is, and then find platforms, and then develop a pace that is as consistent as you need it to be.
Yeah.
That false narrative of always putting out stuff all the time is not true. Being consistent, though, is. So decide what that is.
Yeah.
And stick with it.
We also have I did a talk on personal branding last One Quick Question season, One Quick Coffee season. Sorry. And that's we'll link it in the show notes, and it's also on Infomedia's YouTube. So it's just like personal branding is in the title. But there are a couple exercises in there. That's why it made me think. Like one is to find your unique value proposition, like personally. And there are a couple other things too. But yeah, I think that kind of work is helpful. It's like interesting. It's kind of interesting as just like looking at who am I as a person versus who am I I feel gross about saying as a brand also, but like as a business maybe, or like what am I putting out there? Yeah. Which I think typically are going to be two very related. There should be a large overlap on the Venn diagram, but you don't have to share every single thing you think as a person. It doesn't have to be part of your brand.
Absolutely.
So I think it has been really interesting as we've been exploring personal branding more. But I would agree. I think as a person who has a personal brand and a logo, Infomedia did a logo for me, Sam Humphreys. I think we have an episode on that, actually.
It won't be when this episode comes out, but I think it's her birthday today, by the way.
Oh,
so happy
gosh.
birthday, Sam.
Sam. Well, it's a beautiful logo. I love it. It won an Addy. It's perfect. I rarely use it just because most of my stuff is like speaking events, being on the podcast, that kind of thing. And I just don't have a need to use it. I do use it sometimes. I love having it, but I do agree that isn't necessarily like, that doesn't need to be your first thing.
Right. I love that you use it in your newsletter. And that's like an exact, like, it was one of those, you kind of reap the benefits of that decision that you made. And it was like, oh man, like I want to do a newsletter. I want it to look good. It's like, oh, there's some visuals right there that kind of are helpful with that. But you did the work on deciding kind of like what you wanted to do and what your unique voice was. Yeah. And that immediately, I remember that process with Sam of just like, you didn't know what your color palette was going to be. So we said, show us your favorite books. Yeah. And we like took pictures of them and like
it was
we
great.
pulled
I just like
colors
laid
from that.
the book covers I liked out on the bed, took a picture of it, and
and it was like,
great.
oh, this is a starting point. We like, and it's what do you respond to? And that's a fun exercise to see like you're kind of the sum of all of these different influences. And so what are the things that are your favorite things? What are the things that's like, oh, that's a good starting spot to kind of point towards like, oh, I didn't realize I like sans serifs. Yeah. Like I didn't. It's like, oh, that's fun. Yeah. It's like I guess I'm a sans serif kind of guy. And so that's a good kind of exercise with it.
Yeah, and this is a perfect transition, Caleb.
Man, he's killing it. Killing it.
It's true. You killed it on the questions. You're killing it on the transition. Man. But I did want to talk some about the Localist and our branding, because we've been shifting that. And I think that's helpful to know that. So Carrie Rollwagen, as an entity, I guess, has a brand. So it has a logo, which is what I use in my newsletter, because it isn't necessarily, my newsletter is not always about Localist stuff. It's just about, life things, sometimes writing. Yeah. If you're listening, you should sign up. We'll put a link in the show notes. But it was when I needed a Localist logo, like to grow from the book, I wanted it to be able to live with that like umbrella brand of Carrie Rollwagen. So it didn't need to look, I wanted to be able to talk about either of them, but to also have its unique presence. And both of those times with Sam, with the Carrie Rollwagen branding, and with Kana, with the Localist branding, exactly everything you're saying is completely right.
Mm-hmm.
It is so helpful as a business or as a brand to be able to narrow down what you're thinking because someone else is asking you those questions
Mm-hmm.
that, I'm thinking I'm perceived this way, but they're perceiving me this other way. I'm not paying for market research. So that's very valuable. Like having those questions and me having to decide, oh, I've been talking about these various things, but that's confusing to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I need to narrow my focus.
Well, in yours, not to puff you up, but
Let's do
you're,
it.
You're kind of let's do
You're
this.
already doing great. It's only going up.
Yep. The pattern that you followed or the journey that you followed is what a lot of companies should do. In that, you put out a book, and you had a brand of yourself as a writer, but you didn't have any visuals or anything with that. But you did have a book cover done by Andrew Thompson, who's incredible.
Very good, yeah.
And so when we created your brand, which would be like the parent company, it's like I have a product called The Localist, the book, and I need branding for that. But then you're like, but yeah, I'm more than that one book. So we could have fit everything under The Localist.
Right.
But then it would have stopped making a lot of sense because there's things that aren't necessarily localist type subjects that you wanted to cover. And so it's like, okay, so now let's create a parent company. Google did this. Google is not the parent company. Alphabet is the parent company, but Google's the main product.
Right.
Alphabet's branding, heavily influenced by Google branding. Your first branding that Sam did was not the same, but it was influenced. I'm thinking of the colors you're wearing now were a part of that initial one. And so it was like, great. And so you did that parent brand. But then what that did was it helped free the Localist to not be the thing and to be able to grow and expand from there. Because then it was the product, but then it was, the podcast is this other thing. And so for a while, the podcast was just the same branding as the book. But it's not the book.
Right.
It needs to be a little bit more than that. And so that's when Cana came in and we expanded it and gave that freedom of other colors and ways that kind of was, it's not, like it's different, but it's not like crazy different. Like
it didn't shock the audience.
You can see that they're related, like family members in a lot of ways. And so all of a sudden it was like, this makes so much more sense. Now we can do all these things with it. That's great. And then we expanded it even more recently, which I don't know if you want me to talk about, but
I do. But first I want to say part of the reason we knew we needed to rebrand the Localist at the end of last year was because this is how we felt the tension of outgrowing it. So we wanted to get a business card because many of us on the Localist team would just run into people and they'd be like, we mentioned the podcast. We wanted them to have a takeaway that had a little QR code that they could just listen or whatever. And Kana mocked up a business card, and it's good, but nobody on the team was in love with it, and it came down to it had nothing to do with the design. I think Taylor, who's our showrunner, was like, it just doesn't feel fun, and I think the Localist brand is kind of fun. And that I think was the thing, and it was true. Like it was just more serious, and we are serious, but also kind of like quirky and scrappy. So I think that sometimes you do feel the tension on. This is when it's time to rebrand or to iterate on the brand because you are producing something. Like maybe you're mocking up the trucks, or maybe you're gonna open a new location or whatever, and you're like, this doesn't feel right, even though everything about it is technically right. So it was a cool process, and then we were like, we asked you to do a business card, but what we really want you to do is a massive rebrand.
Again, that's kind of a dream scenario for us too, is that because we feel that tension too and can sometimes give suggestions, but being aware, you develop the habit of knowing that it's an option. And so even the idea of Taylor saying like, this doesn't feel fun, y'all thinking, oh, maybe it's time, that's an option. That's great. And that's not a huge pressure point, a business card. you made that
Yeah.
the past brand work for a lot of people wait so long because they think there's no solution
Yeah.
to it, or like, no, we just got to stick with this, or we'll make arbitrary decisions. We'll just throw it's like, but there is an option to expand that brand or change it or let it grow.
Yeah. I mean, and speaking of, we're still using that business brand business card with the old branding, and we will until we run out.
Yeah.
But it is exciting, and it was fun to see that. I think Kana knocked it out of the park on the branding, because you could also see the team members, like Elena was still working with us at that time, and her eyes just like lit up, and she was doing most of our social assets, and just seeing like, oh, I have so much more to play with. And because there were so many colors, and that's something that I do love about Infomedia's brand kits, when we give those to clients, we give so many more colors than I would have ever imagined were necessary. But it means that even like if I want to go into Canva, choose something that looks great, click on the brand kit, it's like change all the colors to my brand kit, change the fonts to my things. Suddenly it looks fantastic.
A lot of really good decisions made in the past. You're benefiting
exactly.
Yeah.
And it is, again, it's more colors than you would have imagined, but it's so fun to be able to, as somebody, I don't consider myself very visually literate. Like, I typically know, like, this looks great, or I think this looks terrible, but I have no idea how to fix it, and I don't know how to explain it. It's so exciting to be able to, like, really, like you said, it gives you more freedom. The constraints give you freedom.
Yep.
So yeah, let's talk about the expansion of that brand. And part of the reason I want to talk about all of this is for people listening to understand these are the real things that happen to a brand.
Yeah.
Yes, to Coca-Cola, but also just to Carrie Rollwagen and the Localist brand. So these are pivots or changes that you can make.
Yep.
So we decided to do a live event of the Localist called Localist Lab. And these are sponsored by kind of a different group of people than the Localist podcast. Same but different, overlap.
Yep.
But we wanted there to be some distinction. I want there to be distinction, yes, for the audience, but also just internally. It was confusing if we just said the Localist. It's like, wait, are we talking about we have to drive across town to Saturn? Or are we talking about we're going to go in the studio? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So it's weird how we think about, I think we always think about audience, but even internally the branding can be helpful.
Yep.
So kind of tell people about what happened when we, like, the Localist Lab is not a rebrand, but it is a change. So can you kind of explain that?
Yeah, it is exactly what you said. Same but different. And that was the question that we had is when we first met and we knew that we were going to potentially do this. We kind of gave, I think it was like 3 options of the directions we could go. One is, do we want Localist Lab to be its own brand, pros and cons? Or do we want it to be, something that is associated with, a mixture in between? And it would need to be same but different. So it's truly an expansion of it for that application. This would be the equivalency of another company doing a live event or a new product line and things where all of a sudden it's like, okay, so it has to feel like Localist, but it has to be able to be its own thing. So even the idea of it's Localist Lab, not the Localist Lab. Tiny change, but just like, oh, Localist Lab, that's its own thing. Localist, same font. Lab, same font. Introduce a couple new colors of just like, and it was mainly like the dark, and it was more of the emphasis color changed a little bit, where there's a few different versions of it. It is stacked differently. But the main thing that we wanted to do with it, we wanted to have a distinct visual that was associated with Localist Lab. It needed to feel like the Localist still in some ways. And we developed a little bit of a visual vocabulary we could use on signage. So ways that it stacks on top of each other, which if we want to put a link to the brand guide in the show notes, I think that would be great.
Let's do that,
and so it's stacked in a certain way that is actually kind of natural for signage, like vertical signage, to have like title and things. So it was leaning towards that. And then we came up with this like fun dot matrix that made us think of like the beaker holders in labs and things. It got really heady, and then we just stripped it back.
Then, like, I mean, I was debating on several different names. And so I think that even the branding process was helpful for that. in that I came to you guys with the names, and you were like immediately, I think you were like, Localist Lab, this is going to be great. Like,
Yeah.
we have, I don't think that exact visual, like, I think Kana brought that to the table, but there were all these visuals. I actually was talking to somebody about this today. The same thing happened with the Localist book. They were like, when did, because I used to have a blog called Shop Small, and they were like, when did that switch to the Localist? And I was like, well, I needed to switch it when I published the book because American Express owns Shop Small, so I can't use that. And I was thinking, like, should it be Localist or like Localist Papers, kind of like Federalist Papers? And I think I was working with Andrew at the time designing, and we were like, he was like, simple is better. And so I actually think working with your designer on that can be really good.
Yeah, and we did a practice that I love, is making a decision and trying to live with it for a little bit instead of trying to war over what decision you should make. It's Creativity Inc. is an amazing book, and he talks about, like, if you've got two mountains and you know that your destination is up one of those, the best thing you can do is choose a mountain and run up it as fast as you can, because that way you'll know if it's the right one, or really quickly if it's the wrong one. So when we were having the name conversation, you threw out Localist Lab, we all liked it, but we said, for the rest of the conversation and for the next like week, let's just call it that and see how it fits.
Yeah.
And that was awesome.
Yeah.
Like, that was just a great thing of, like, does it fit?
Yeah.
So from that, we were able to chase that idea of, like, what is a lab and things like that, which led to kind of this, like, fun dot matrix. But immediately this ended up being down to, like, oh, those could be arrows and signage and things. So it was really fun. But this is a perfect example of, there's gonna be products, events, applications you don't foresee. Some of them fit within your brand, and if you just make room for them a little bit, sometimes they need to be entirely different things. It could have ended that way, but this fit within it, and it actually, I think, adds to the brand. It makes the Localist brand feel stronger because it has this kind of segment over here for live events.
I think so too, and I also enjoy having you guys to talk to about, like, what needs to be a sub brand and what doesn't. Because I think we even discussed, well, I'm getting very meta, these episodes, like, where I'm interviewing experts from our different companies instead of a business owner. We're like, does this need to be separate? And we're all like, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Or is this a lab episode, or is this episode? And it seems weird. Like, it seems like, oh my gosh, like, just get over it. Like, and make, like, but it is really helpful to be able to talk through those decisions at the beginning instead of getting all the way into it and being like, oh, we need to walk this back because it doesn't make sense to our audience.
It is the decision will be made. Do you want to make it thoughtfully?
Yeah.
Or just kind of arbitrarily and just have it be something that we did that one time, we did this other time, and immediately that'll start to create some confusion, even if it's just internal confusion. And so having those conversations seems kind of like, why would you need, it's like, have those conversations because you will reap the benefits later of past decisions and kind of that criteria to kind of keep within.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of reaping benefits, this is a callback, but I actually think we used the same colors for the Localist Lab. I think we just used the sub-colors.
Yes, it was more the emphasis color changed.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that was so really cool about having all those colors in the beginning, is that, they're minor colors in the Localist podcast, but they're pulled through so that, again, these are not things your typical person scrolling through Instagram and finding out about Localist Lab or coming to Localist Lab is not going to notice, oh, that light pink is the same light pink that I saw in a minor color on the Localist podcast graphic. But subconsciously, these things do resonate, and they help it to feel cohesive and to communicate what you're doing. So
there's a great quote, I think it's Johnny Ives, that said, when he was in his Apple era, said people can intuit more than they can articulate. And
that's
so
perfect,
it is like they don't know why. They don't have to know why. All of a sudden it's like, that just feels right. Like, that feels accurate. And it's like, that's it.
And all feeding together too, that idea of, like, when we wanted to switch, our team thought, we think the Localist is more fun than this. The brand became more fun. But now, because the branding is more fun, you can see, oh, there's a Localist Lab event, and this isn't going to be just a boring event. Like, even the branding has an exclamation point in it. I didn't decide that, but Kana designed it that way. It looks great, and it looks more fun. It doesn't look like this is going to be the same business event that I've been to a million times, because it's not.
Yep.
And it is cool how that all comes, like, feeds in on itself.
Yep. It feels, hopefully people walk in and they think, this was better than I anticipated.
Yeah.
And it feels right.
Yeah.
Like, it's like they offered more than I thought, and oh my gosh, this feels, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, y'all were cueing me the whole time.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like, I thought it was going to be a normal business event, but look at everything around it. This all makes sense now.
And that's how those events are usually. Like, we work really hard to not, in the presentations that we do, we work really hard to say, like, yes, we'll tell you the professional way to do it. We'll also tell you the scrappy way to do it. We'll also tell you the fun way to do it.
Yep.
We'll make little jokes throughout.
Yep.
You'll have free tacos. You'll have some coffee. Like, all of those come to being more fun. And also, I really love the lab idea, because it's like, small business is always kind of an experiment. And that is what we want people to leave with knowing. And so it is cool that the brand is telling them that. They're intuiting that before they even come. So in case you're listening, please come to a Localist Lab event if you're in town.
Yeah. And they are very fun.
Yeah, they really are. And if you're not in town, we actually do put them online, so we'll link to that.
And those are less fun because you're not there, so you should come to it. Because
you have to go get tacos first.
Yeah, that's right.
You have to make yourself a
true.
coffee.
That's true.
We should put a thing on YouTube first. Go get your snack.
Yes.
Yeah.
Step 1, snacks.
These are Localist Lab, better with snacks. Different than a regular lab.
Love that.
Yeah. So it just rolls off the tongue. Thank you so much, Caleb. I think the people who ask these questions are going to be happy with it, and
hopefully.
It's always fun to talk.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much to Caleb for coming on today. And if you submitted a question, thank you for that as well. If you're interested in submitting questions in the future, do that through my Instagram. I'm at @CRollwagen. The Localist podcast is written and produced by me, Carrie Rollwagen. Our showrunner is Taylor Davis. Our outreach manager is Hannah Cragen. And we record right here at Infomedia Studios. Our engineer in the studio with us today is Aaron Duncan. Thank you so much to Infomedia for sponsoring the podcast and making everything we do possible. Until next time, whether you're buying from a local business or running one, thank you for all you do to make our community stronger every day.